Welcome back to Hello Lady, you guys. We are currently at the Katsuragi household, and I'm not sure if we're planning on killing him here or if we're just kind of getting a feel for it, but Narita is planning something, and now Sorako B is onto him, and I think Sorako B ultimately wants to protect Sorako from any more emotional damage, right? So I feel like losing your father would be a pretty big piece of emotional damage. So we're gonna see how this plays out. Humans are dead as they live.
初めてそれに気づいたのはまだ小さかった頃だ。
It was a small paradise she could never forget. Back then, she felt fulfilled when she just ran around the fields with the other children. She had no mom or dad around, but never felt lonely. This is your home. There was a boy who said that, as well as a girl who clung to her and asked to play with her. The other boy didn't talk much, but he was always kind to her. Then he died. Her father told her that the mansion had burned to the ground. The boy, his little sister, their parents, everyone in the mansion died. Normally, she would have been there too. She had only survived because she stayed at her father's place by chance. Everyone she knew and everyone who knew her had disappeared, and Sorako Katsuragi's paradise came to an end. After waiting until Narita fell asleep, she went to the reception room where she saw her stepmother.
それで何があったの？ちゃんと見えたんでしょうね。あの成田って男の傷は。
Sorako had a special power, a halo that let her see people's wounds. Romeo and Juliet types, ones that influence the mind, were very rare, but Sorako's were especially imprecise and not exactly powerful. Her influence didn't go beyond seeing. Sorako often thought she'd become an Etoila by mistake, though that only applied to the academy system. Within normal society, Sorako Katsuragi's power was a true poison. Abnormality easily made short work of normality. Since society's rules were based on what was normal, it had no defense against the abnormal. If one could sneak peeks at other secrets, their wounds, they could easily use them to gain an upper hand. After Sorako's halo awakened, the Katsuragis used her power many times to multiply their wealth. And tonight, too, she'd been ordered to look at Narita's
お
wound.
前の力で何が見えたの？さあ、おっしゃい。
はい。
Oh no, is she gonna snitch on us? The boy had died. Her mother had died shortly after. And so, Sorako no longer had anywhere to return to.
男ならまだ役に立ったのに。
That was the first thing she'd heard after being taken in by her father's family. And that was why she'd started dressing as a man. She was a born outsider. Her hair and eye colors were different than those around her. Those she knew and those who knew her had vanished, and she no longer had any place to go. It was the past that made the person Sorako who had lost hers was a mere wraith. She felt like someone who had praised her hair when she was young, calling it beautiful, but she could barely remember it anymore. She had almost died once she got a bad fever.
死んでしまえばいいのに。
Through the veil of illness, she had heard those words. When the fever had abated, she started to see things others couldn't. She first saw her father, and his face, body, his very being looked like an atrocious monster covered in holes. His stepmother had followed, and she looked no different. As if gouged and pierced, they had bleeding wounds all over them. It didn't make sense that they were still alive. She had screamed, which led to her getting punched. Something that wounded could not possibly be alive. They'd probably be dead from the start.
私たちは生まれた時から子宮の中で腐れている。
She'd finally realized that simple fact. Humans were dead as they lived. They were lifeless puppets who did nothing but move. And so, she had stopped wishing for things. Puppets had no desires, after all. Upon realizing Sorako's power, her parents instantly wanted to use it. She did as told and looked into the wounds of many people. Some were led to ruin, but she didn't feel anything. Puppets had no heart, after all. Her mother was right to name her Sorako, which meant child of the sky. No matter how hard they tried, humans could never reach the sky. Humans were creatures who led meaningless lives. where they did nothing but look up at the cold blue sky. She wasn't alive, but she was afraid to die. That was why she tried to stop thinking, to join the ranks of the empty, moving corpses.
何も。
何なのよ。
ですから、大きな傷は何もありませんでした。
She responded with those words. Sorako covering our butts. Let's go. She actually knows a huge wound of ours that was very compromising. One time in the past, when Sorako had tried to stop thinking, she heard a voice.
聞こえてるか？
Sorako didn't lose herself because she stayed by her side. Not much changed when they were split into two, but Sorako endured and lived on even if she wanted to stop. That was why she remained in this world.
本当に？素性を隠すような男なのよ。何か目立つ秘密があるんじゃないの？
いいえ、何もありませんでした。
She never once held a grudge against her parents. As a person, Sorako severely lacked the ability to hate or curse others. The reason why her parents had sent her to the academy despite her power's usefulness was simple. She scared them. Sorako had turned into an adult, so they were afraid that the power they'd exposed many secrets and led many to ruin would be directed at them next. That was why they chased her away. Even if there was no real reason to be afraid, there was no logic behind the fear. In fact, the fear felt well deserved. Oh, excuse me, there was logic.
僕はもう子供じゃないよ。
She used to have no reason to lie, so she had always done as told. But she could easily lie if she had a reason. She had come to learn of the outside world in the academy and become an adult. She'd met Saku's group in Narita. The days when the two of her just sat idly by in this were gone. Hama didn't realize that until the very end. Well, that's okay. Nobody likes you anyways. A few days had passed. That day, I prepared for yet another event, but I ended up returning without any trouble. In a way, I felt disappointed. If you ignored that, however, my plans were proceeding smoothly. Ooh, okay. The second act had gone silent, but it was progressing at a rapid pace. My days in the academy continued to be peaceful, hiding all signs of the chaos raging below the calm surface. You could say that we gazed at the stage's curtains before they opened, though I couldn't help but note the times such peace were rare for Shin Narita. Oh, I'm sure things are gonna come falling down pretty soon.
お弁当用意するの手間取っちゃった。寮を出るのがすっかり遅くなったね。
Everyone else had already left, but I'd stayed behind and waited for Sorako, who was still in the kitchen. This led to us arriving 30 minutes later than
講
usual.
義の開始には十分間に合う。慌てることはない。この国は豊かな四季のある得難い国だ。初夏の心地を存分に味わっていくのもいいものだよ。
I took a deep breath of the air, which was full of the scent of greenery. The academy had been built atop deforested land, and the forest near the research building was a remnant of that.
成田くん、わざわざ僕を待ってないで先に行ってくれててもよかったのに。
What do you mean, Sorako? I would never leave you behind. That would be very ungentleman of me.
空子の作っていたのは私の分なのだろう。そんな君を残して一人で出発するような無粋は人種たるもののすべきことではないのだよ。
Exactly, Narita. That would not have been very gentlemanlike of us. We would never leave you, Sorako.
それに一人での道のりは寂しいものではないかね。
そうだね。僕も成田くんと一緒に歩けて嬉しいよ。
Yeah, Sorako, you're a real one. You lied to your parents about, our wound. So that gets you an A+ in my book. I respect you. Hey, Sorako, don't think about that. That's a little bit sad. But I do want you to think about it a little bit because I want to know what happened. Like, from her perspective, I think it's very interesting. Her full smile almost brought back a fragment of the memories that had already turned to ash. This was dangerous. Light shocks ran down my neck as my instincts warned me of that fact. To Shinri Narita, Sorako Katsuragi was a dangerous poison. And I knew it all along. I knew about her mother's death, the fact that she'd entered her father's family, and that she'd enrolled in Tenkawa Noble Academy. And most importantly, I knew that I would see her if I came here to enact my revenge. Dang, that looks cool. It would have been awesome if she had like a lightning-based power. I don't know. That would be awesome. We haven't seen anybody that has something like that yet. I'm still wondering, like, so we had that explosion, right? When we were doing the choreography. Like, have they ever really explained what happened during that? Like, as far as I know, it was never explained. Like, I'm wondering if that was someone's power that did that. I'm curious to see what really happened and if they'll go into that more. Or maybe they explained it and I just don't remember because, yeah, I don't think we ever got an explanation. The fact that she had become an Etoile grade Halo user was unexpected, however. Though I had some close calls, Sorako had yet to realize that Shinri Narita's true identity. I reminisced about the sky I'd gazed up at long ago. I could still remember the rainbow decorating the sky after the rain. She must have suspected me. At her core, Sorako was a sharp young woman. Whenever she appeared dull or tense, it was due to her, or dull or dense, it was due to her excessive consideration of others. She always put too much effort into helping others. There was also Sorako B, who was, in her own right, very sharp as well. Kind of interesting to have, you know, two people essentially sharing the same body, but they have like their own thought process, even though they're using the same brain, right? You would think they would use the same, they would have like the same deduction skills, right? But I feel like they both kind of have their own thoughts about things, which is interesting. I don't really know too much about like multiple personalities, but it's interesting that you could have completely different viewpoints with the same shared experiences, right? Sorako B knew all about the unrest within Sorako. They shared memories, and even if Sorako B had none of those from Sorako's childhood, she still knew all the current Sorako's thoughts. Sorako had her suspicion as well, but she denied them. After all, Shunsui Mikado had died 7 years ago. Or had he? Dun dun dun. As my wavering feelings drifted further into the past. Oh, Miss Tokino, we haven't talked to you in a while. I saw Tokino Yomase standing in the pre-morning lecture hallway, looking comfortable in her usual lab coat. Seeing Sorako and I walk together made her expression shift for a moment. Normal people would have missed it, but Shinri Narita was too sharp, as unfortunate as it was for her. For just a flash, her pale face had a hint of worry on it, something that didn't belong on a lady as cold and clever as her. Interesting, I wonder what she made that face for.
Ohayo, Tokino Joshi. まだ講義まで時間があるはずだが、急ぎ足でどこへ行こうというのかね。もしや我々の時計が遅れていたのなら一大事だ。
いえ、あなたたちの時計は正確でしょう。講義の前に用事を済ませるために急いだだけですから。
Her self-control seemed nearly perfect, so I didn't see any hint of wavering within her heart.
成田君、本日放課後、北のコンパートメントまで来てください。今後について相談したいことがあります。
Oh, you want to discuss the future, huh? It's that type of game, okay. So, we're jumping off of Sorako's route onto Tokino's route, right? No, I'm just kidding. I don't know, I don't think there is a route with her. That would be kind of weird. Because I know, we have, like, I think it's called New Division. So, after we do all the routes, we have, like, New Division. I believe there's one for Hishia, and then there's one for another girl. And I don't know if it's Tokino or not. That'd be a little strange to me, but... I don't know. I'd be down. We'll do it.
それはあれかね。ジャパニーズスクールにはつきものの進路ディスカッションというやつだろうか。ならばぜひとも一度好みで味わってみたいと思っていたのだよ。
Career path, huh? Yeah, totally.
味わうほどのものであるかはともかくとして、おおよそそのようなものです。
After stating her business, Tokino Yomase turned around and entered the pre-lecture classroom.
時野先生、一体何の用だろう。スクールは普通の学園じゃないから進路相談なんてやったりしないのに。
Yeah, I kind of feel like the academy wants to enable you to have the skills to figure that out on your own. Like they don't need to tell you what career you're going to go into. You're just going to go in there and find yourself in something.
何？私はこの通り特別の人材だ。 教師としては常日頃
Shut
から
up.
心を砕くことがあるのだろうね。主に混じることのできない好みのゆえん、慎んでお受けしよう。
I don't know. I feel like towards the start of the game, Narita like never really like bragged about himself too much. He was always very humble, and then like as the game's been going, he's been like, "I'm an exceptional human being. This must be due to my inability to mix with a crowd, because I stand out, even in a school full of exceptional people."
そうかな。
Is that how it is? I feel like Sorako even is doubting him. She's like, "I'm tired of your crap. Shut up."
さて、何を企んでいる？夜店時の。
I'm curious too. Very curious. Classes ended without any problems. As agreed, I entered Tokino Yomasei's compartment. There was actually 2 spaces she occupied in the academy. As the main teacher of all 200 HMI, she naturally had an office in the first school building. It doubled as the infirmary, and it was designed to look like a bleeding-edge examination room. On the other hand, the northern compartment, as it was called, was her private space in the research building. She was not only the main teacher here, but also the head of HMI research, and as such, she spent her days leading the many researchers.
わざわざ校舎ではなく研究棟に呼び出すとはね。そのままに受け取れば教師としての立場でなく話をしたいということになる。魅力にあふれる年下の学生の横顔に時の女子が売れた
Oh my
の
gosh.
情熱を持て余したという可能性も捨てがたいか。
How did I know that this was going to be implied? That's why I'm wondering if she has a route. I don't remember who the other girl is that has a route. So it's like, I'm trying to rack my brains thinking. I wouldn't be surprised if this game of all games has a route like that, because he seems to not have boundaries when it comes to women, okay? He'll go after any woman he wants, as long as they have a big enough chest. You know, that's his one requirement, right? For a moment, I felt like I saw my dearest maid, Hishia, shrug like an American, but I quickly realized that she was probably merely in my imagination. Dang. I'm so excited for her route, though. It's gonna be so good. That was my first official visit to the research building. It was located opposite from the school, and the facility area that contained the gymnasium and the pool stood between them. Students weren't normally allowed to enter the research building's grounds, which was separated from the school and other accessible facilities by 2 gates. At the entrance, I gave my name and student number. Once security finished checking me, they handed me a temporary pass card. It had a string on it, so I put it over my neck. While here, it was necessary to have it out at all times. Gosh, the school's so restrictive. As I walked through the hallway, my vision reacted to the card and showed me a guide arrow. This was the bleeding-edge info layer technology that the Academy made liberal use of. It led me to Tokino Yomasei's room without me even ever having to ask for directions. I followed the arrow and quickly found my destination.
成田だ。お呼びにより参上した。
入ってきてください。
The electrical lock on the door opened. This compartment looked exactly the same as the one in the school building. This was probably intentional, which just showed how methodical this woman was. Miss Tokino sat in front of her desk and looked at me with cold, sharp eyes. It wasn't quite hostile, but it was certainly in the same vein.
まるで自慢のカナリアに近づく野良猫を見るような目で私を見るのね。背筋が凍るが、この刺激は一種の快楽でもある。珍しい体験をさせてもらったことに感謝しよう。
Wonder if we're in trouble for doing something. Or if she's a little bit skeptical of us having gone to Shinzen's house.
あなたの趣味が悪いのはいつものことですが、おそらく今感じている感情は気のせいでしょう、成田君。
Oh yes, I'm sure.
なるほど。ではそうなのだろう。ところで時の女子。
The room became still as a grave. We both understood that the time for jokes has ended. Tokino Yomasei stopped hiding her hostility. She clearly knew that I'd noticed, but continued speaking politely regardless. It seemed she planned to cut right to the
あ
chase.
の子に必要以上に近づかないように。
Oh, so you're worried about Sorako, huh?
代名詞で話されても理解しがたいのだが。
I love that Narita's playing dumb here. He knows exactly what's going on. I merely spoke my honest thoughts, but they made Miss Tokino raise an eyebrow. What a rare sight. This cold woman was doing her best to hide her displeasure, but it wasn't enough.
ソラコ。桂木ソラコさんのことです。
あの子が誰なのかは理解した。それでは次に理由を伺いたいものだね。スクールは理由もなく人間関係を制限するのかね。
Whoa, when did Narita start thinking they were in a relationship? I didn't think they were in a relationship quite yet. They're definitely building one.
ここの学則にも友好関係や男女交際の禁止についての規則はなかったはずだと記憶している。
Of course, since I made a point to never read terms and conditions, I didn't read the Academy's rules either. That was merely a guess. He's just like, I don't actually know if that's a rule, but I'm pretty sure it's not. Miss Tokino fell silent for a moment. I could tell by her expression it wasn't due to rage, but profound thought, which was something that suited her quite well.
彼女は貴重な人材です。
あなたの講義によれば HMI とは誰もがノーブルとなるための貴重な人材ではないのね。
Okay, Narita, he's shooting back. He's like, hey, I'm gonna use what you've been saying in class, right back at you, okay? So that description fits everybody here.
当然です。私はいかなるものであれ、人間の価値は平等であり、能力や立場によって生命の重さが変わるべきではないと信じています。しかし、あえて言いましょう。
I'm gonna be honest, I don't believe for a second that she thinks that. Like, she's in a school full of noble people, you know, gifted. She doesn't think everyone's equal. She thinks everyone here is equal, right? Maybe. But she's saying Sorako's different. So, if you value Sorako the same as everyone else, why are you protecting her more than everyone else? So, I don't really believe this at all. I'm gonna be honest with you.
桂木空子は特別であり、代替のない人間です。
Well, if everyone's equal, isn't that the same of anybody here? I kept the searing rage from welling up and stifled my emotions deep inside. Words about humans being equal and having the same weight to their lives were heavy curses.
さすがは世界に冠たる学問の頂き、LSOM で史上最年少のクワドリガに選ばれた夜店時の女子。見事な高潔さだ。
So I'm going to be honest, I'll give you my opinion on whether human beings are equal. I think everyone is equal. But where you start seeing it differently is everyone has someone in their lives that they value more than others. Okay? So that's where it comes in. Like, if we look at it at a fundamental level, everyone's equal, right? There's really nobody who's better than somebody else because, you know, at the end of the day, everyone's going to die eventually. And once you're dead, what does it really matter, right? But where things change is, like, let's say me as an individual, you know, I'm married, so I would value my wife over pretty much anybody else, right? And I have a daughter, I would value her over pretty much anybody else too. And then, you know, maybe I'd look at like my parents or somebody or family, I would value them over other people, right? And that's where you start having that difference in having human beings be equal, because at the end of the day, each individual person's going to value somebody more than another person. So in the eyes of an individual, yes, we're not equal, because I would say that I like my wife more than some random stranger off the street, right? Because I know my wife, I wouldn't know some random person, right? But at the end of the day, I feel like all humans are equal. Like, we're all in this together. We're all trying to live and you know, survive and have a good life, right? I think that's equally important to everybody. The unexpected direction this conversation took made Miss Tokino look daunted.
よく知っていましたね、その名前を。普通の人間は LSOM の存在など知りませんよ。
北米にある世界屈指の学術機関。そこには世界中から天才が集い、天才による天才のためのあらゆる研究が行われているという。一説によると、あらゆる研究なく知識を極めようとする LSOM の内実は、とても世間に公開できるものではないからか。私はこれでも苦労はしてきた人間なのでね、耳の良さについては多少自慢なのだよ。さて、先ほどの話に戻すとしよう、時の女子。あなたの言わんとすることがよくわからないのだが、 できればもう少し説明をお願いしたい。
You know, Narita would make a great Boy Scout because he comes prepared. Like, look at how much research he's done. He knows about something that most people don't, and he came in here using that as like an advantage over her in this conversation. He's in essentially leading it in a way, and that's how he gets his way.
いいでしょう、成田真理。あなたもエトワールに選ばれた人間です。無関係ではありません。知る権利はあります。たとえスクールの趣旨に批判的であるとしても。
You know, I'm glad we can have a reasonable conversation here, because I feel like Narita should be privy to secrets that maybe some other people in the school wouldn't know. Which goes back to, I don't really believe that Miss Tokino thinks of everyone as equals, because obviously the Etoilas are above everyone else, right? Like, they're the best of the best. So I think that's interesting that she said that she has that opinion, because I just don't believe that she thinks that.
面と向かって忌憚のない意見を聞かされるというのはなかなかに心躍る体験だ。
現段階では明かせないことも少なくありませんので、抽象的な表現になるのは理解してください。
It felt as though she gave in to me, as though I'd somehow closed the gap between us to an extent.
承知した。
エトワールとは単純に強力なハローを制御できるノーブルに近いものではありません。それはスクールの目指す理念の体現者であり、同時にこのスクールの安全保障機構でもあります。
200人の HMI をコントロールする要ということだね。
そしていずれ選ばれる次の候補者でもあります。
Next, her figurative manner of speech was her way of relaying that she couldn't say anything more. She wouldn't answer even if I asked. At the very least, I now knew that to Kurofune Mikado, the one who'd established the academy, and Tokuno Yomase, an important figure in all of this, Etoilas were more than just candidates for nobility.
時の女子の話は実に興味深い。
現時点では音無作と桂木空子が最も高い可能性を示しています。彼女たちは特別の中でもさらに一級の特別なのです。
Well, I think this kind of goes back to what Sorako's parents were talking about, Shinzen and Tama. How they used her power to essentially gain leverage over people. Because they knew their deep, dark secrets, they had some kind of blackmail, they had some kind of, like I said, leverage, and an advantage over somebody in a conversation, right? Like, you could attack that weakness. You could know things that essentially you wouldn't have known otherwise through very intimate, detailed experiences. And now Sorako's power isn't necessarily 100%, it feels like. It feels like she could still improve it, right? That's kind of what they've been saying. But if she could get that to a point where it was very consistent and she could be confident, maybe she could read into things that aren't as deep. Because I know our scar is pretty deep, right? But maybe at some point she could read into smaller things. She could find out very small details about someone's life, and that could be a huge advantage when you're negotiating and having a conversation with world leaders, right? So I think that's where Sorako's potential comes in, and I've been kind of wondering that as we went into a route where Sorako's strength lies, right? And it's not really a physical thing, it's a very mental thing, or almost an emotional thing maybe for some people, how she can read into those memories. It's a very powerful tool. Not really like physically, like I said, but it's a conversational advantage. It's a very political thing. So I could see why they would consider her to be one of the top ranks there, if she could read into things that have, hurt people in the past. Saku, I don't really know what hers is. I'm hoping once we get to her route, we'll learn more about that. But I'll stop talking y'all's ears off. Let's go ahead and see what she has to say here. I decided to put a dent in her
以
composure.
前ソラコのハローは未成熟で完全にコントロールできないと聞いたんだが、にもかかわらず彼女は次とやら有力候補に。
そんなことまで。
A ripple-like change appeared in her expression, but she quickly recomposed herself.
現時点での開発進度は問題ではありません。
Yeah, it's not about where she's at right now, and like she's already pretty strong. I feel like where she's at. as far as her ability, it still can read a lot of information, but it could get better.
ハローは特に能力が安定しない成長期においては非常に繊細です。些細な心理的変化でその能力が変質してしまう場合があります。
We kind of learned earlier, though, that like the people that essentially ascend later in life, that it's like an artificial thing. So I'm wondering where that's going to come into play, because they said before that she was sick, right? And when after she got over with her fever, then she had that ability. I wonder when they're going to touch on that more. And that was why she didn't want me near Sorako Katsuragi. She didn't say out loud, but I could tell by her hostile gaze.
成田真理、あなたはエトワールでありながらクラウンのメンバーにも加わらず学園運営にも不参加だそうですね。
I don't know. I think in a way that makes us pretty unique among the whole school.
サクから聞いたのかね。その通りだ。残念ながら私はこれでも忙しい身の上だ。まして時の女子も承知の通り、この学園の趣旨には賛同していないのだからやむを得ないとは思わないね。
あなたはこのスクールへの批判的、いえ、反抗的傾向が強すぎます。あなたを6人目として招いたのは間違いだったかもしれない。
She's telling us that straight to our face. I'm so glad she's saying that, though. It's good for him to know. Oh, it was, and she would know the extent of their errors soon enough. Let's go, Narita. Those are fighting words. I really like this dynamic of him like rebelling against the school, but also being at the top of it too. Like, I think that's awesome.
成田君、私はスクールで行われていることが人類の未来に素晴らしい成果をもたらすと信じています。
I thought of something to compare it to. It's a lot like Kill la Kill with Matoi Ryuko, as she's like climbing the ranks, right? And eventually she gets... Okay, this is a spoiler, right? So if you don't want to get spoiled by Kill la Kill, close your ears for a second. But eventually she reaches like the top of the Elite Four, right? And she's within their ranks. I think it's a very similar dynamic to Narita. Like, he's at the top, but he opposes like everything they stand for, right? I love it. Like, those are like some of my favorite types of stories.
この夜店時乃は個人的な感情に動かされる人間ではありません。ですから、それが必要とされるならば、手段を選ばないことも選択できる人間です。
よくわかっている。
では成田君、帰ってもらって結構です。
Oh, I will. Whether I take them to heart or not is a different matter, however.
今夜の特別な対話の最後に一つ質問を構わない。
答えられることであれば。
先ほどの話題にあった次の候補とやらとして私はどうなのだ。
タイプハムレットであるあなたは次の第一級の候補とは言えません。もちろん今後の成長を含めて可能性はあります。
Hold up, type Hamlet HMI. I think we had a lesson that explained each of them, but I don't remember a Hamlet one. What does that mean? I hope they expand upon that a little bit more, because I'm so lost at what some of these HMIs like actually do. Like, I've seen like different examples of them, but it's really hard for me to tell what someone's HMI is without them like outright explaining it. I'm still very lost at doing that. Type Hamlet HMI. Okay, we're gonna have to remember that.
では、今後さらなる飛躍を目指して努力を重ねるとしよう。
期待しています。
I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you are. Dang, this conversation was awesome. Like, we learned so much good stuff going on. I love it. I love that he's just openly rebelling against them, and like she's just tired of his crap. I love it so much. And so, I left Miss Tokino's room. That was a freaking great conversation. I love it. It was already dark as I walked out of the building.
成田君、今研究棟の方から来たようだけれど、何かあったのかね?
You know, just bringing down the system, that's all. Nothing major. As I exited the research building, Mr. Shishikai approached me in what looked like a chance meeting. Oh, I'm sure it was by chance.
獅子会教諭はどうやら研究棟へ行くようだが、この時間から仕事かね。あなたも確かここの研究職員だったな。
Well, I believe he, doesn't he teach something, or does he just work at the plant? I thought he taught a class, but I could be wrong.
私は一般学科とはいえ講師も兼任だからね。
Yeah, he is a teacher, okay.
仕事が多くて嫌になるよ。
よく学び、よく働く。王なる人間には日々の努力の積み重ねこそが寛容だ。たとえ歩みが目に見えなくとも、それは必ず糧となる。せいぜい励みたまえ。
君のような人間からすると。
Oh, whoa, what is that face for, my guy?
かもしれないね。
That face looks a little sinister, don't you think? As he walked away without waiting for my response, I thought about my words and turned around.
才ある者が努力していないというのであれば、その認識を正しておこう。あなたから見た多くの者が無駄なあがきをするように。それは単に歩幅の違いでしかない。
Okay, Narita, I'm so enjoying you being just a complete rebel today. Like I'm enjoying it a lot.
身につけたものしか得られない人気者。私であれ、時の女子であれ、同じことなのよ。
I had no intention of saying anything more, so I simply took my leave. Yeah, freaking screw you. I know you're a bad guy. It's so obvious. I know Miss Tokino's doing bad crap too.
ごちそうさま。では。
It's like freaking everyone. You know all the adults in this are doing something shady.
なり。
部屋にいる。今日のところは早くに休ませてもらうとしよう。失礼。
Oh, you're gonna blow off Soraka like that? I don't know about that, my guy.
思いますが、今の変態、浮気がバレて逃げる旦那みたいで、妙に慌ただしくなかったですか？
I mean, that's a very interesting comparison, Eru, but
玉緒
I
も最
suppose.
近は帰り遅いわよね。なんだか。
Oh, yes, because Tamao's doing her own research, right? Sorako seemed to want to say something after dinner, but I pretended not to hear her and quickly returned to my room.
朝の時の女子とのことを尋ねたかったかもしれないが、私としたことがらしくもないが。
Yeah, that was a little strange, my guy. The Shinri Narita Sorako Katsuragi was a poisoned dagger. Now that I knew that, I had to make some distance between us to keep her from dulling my will to fight.
そうもいかないか。
Really? I honestly think he should get closer to her. I think he's gonna be able to use her to find out a lot of things, because just think about her power, right? She can look into some pretty deep scars, and that could be helpful against Kurofune, that could be helpful against Shinzen, and there's another person that I don't even know. He said that he's getting revenge against 4 people. Obviously there was Takashi Hanazono, there's Kurofune Mikado, and then Shinzen Katsuragi, but we don't know who the 4th one is yet. So I feel like she could be instrumental in helping him with at least 2 of those people, right? Because one's dead and the other one's her father, and she ain't gonna help with him. If I changed the way I treated her, people were bound to assume things. The second act was already in motion. I had to avoid anything that could make a mess of a situation.
どうする？成田真理。
I still had to consider Sorako B and Tokino Yomose. Too many factors were outside of my calculations. A wrong move could prove fatal.
私としたことが、それでは打つ手なしではないか。
Well, it depends. I'm trying to figure out what his goal is in this route, because obviously it started off leading like he was going to try to kill Shinzen, right? But now I'm not too sure what he's trying to do.
夜更けに誰かね。
I unconsciously pictured a certain face. I got no response, but the person didn't leave either. I couldn't let them just stay there, and I didn't feel any hostility, so I opened the door. And the face I'd pictured mixed with the shadowy visage within the darkness of the hallway became real.
こんばんは。
空子。今夜は何の用かね。
成田くん。
Her eyes looked strangely determined. I tried to think why, but nothing came to mind. I think she could tell that something was wrong. I suggested that she sit on the sofa, but instead she lowered herself to the floor and sat on her soles, doing a so-called seiza. She didn't even take the green plush toy she liked. Instead, she simply glanced at it briefly. Her non-Japanese appearance didn't suit the traditional Japanese manner of sitting. Nevertheless, she persisted.
隠し事はしたくないので言わせてください。
Okay.
今日はよくよく先の見えない話ばかりをされる日だ。いや、こちらのことだよ。気にしないでくれたまえ。
Saying that she didn't want to keep secrets was a strange preface. Also, the fact that such a kind girl had a rather serious expression on her face was reason to believe that whatever she was going to say was extremely important. I felt like I had to fix my posture and listen carefully. Thus, I followed her example and did a seiza in front of her. I know I'm pronouncing that right. Excuse me, I know I'm pronouncing it wrong. I'm not pronouncing it right. I'm sorry, I just don't know how to pronounce it. I'm going to be honest.
では、聞こう。
今日時の先生から成田くんに近づくなと言われました。
Okay, so this was a 2-point conversation. It was 1 point for us and then 1 point for Sorako. She admitted that with a formal tone quite unlike her usual one. I hadn't expected that at all, and the fact that I hadn't made me realize how dull my mind was. Apparently, I wasn't myself when it came to Sorako. Miss Tokino was a person who never held back. If she truly wanted Shinri Narita to stay away from Sorako, she would have never left it at just a warning.
先ほど私も同じ話をされたよ。
やっぱりそうですか。成田くん、研究棟に呼ばれたのはその件なんですね。
I wonder if she would go so far as to, like, separate us somehow. Like, removing either me or her from the building. Sorako didn't seem too surprised, which was surely a sign that she knew why Tokino wanted to keep us apart. It might have been a good idea to ask about it, but I chose to first listen to what Sorako had to say.
それから母には成田くんに近づくよう言われました。
I like that Sorako's being honest with us, though. I feel like that goes to show, like, how much of a relationship we developed with her, especially through the common route.
そちらは分かりやすいことだね。
I didn't even have to ask to understand her reasons. How comical. They sent their daughter to win the favor of Shinri Narita, a man who wished to bring them to ruin.
人に言われるまま生きるのは気楽だが人形と同じだ。私にはそんな人生は耐えられない。だから、空子。
I had several things I could say, and the best option was probably among them. However, I spoke before I thought things through.
遠くへ行って自由に生きるかね。
She looked perplexed, and of course she was, since my words were both sudden and didn't seem connected to our discussion at all. I thought so myself, and I was the one who said them, so she had obviously shared my feelings on the matter.
いや、そうではない。そうではないが。
成田くんが口ごもるなんて珍しいね。
She is right, though. He usually does know what he wants to say, even if he has to take a moment to say it. She finally spoke in her usual tone. The first smile she gave me since entering my room was as fulfilling as it had been long ago. Excuse me. While Saku's smile, for example, had a piercing strength to it, Sorako had an embracing warmth. That was why I managed to find the right words.
先ほどの言葉は本気だよ、空子。君は言うなれば小さな花だ。風雨を耐え忍ぶ強さはあっても、風に抗って育つ力はないのだろう。一つを信じて貫き通すのも選択だが、過ちを受け入れ、新たな道を模索するのも勇気ある選択だ。人は時に逃げ出してもいいのだと私は思っている。だから空子、ここにとどまるのが君にとって幸福でないのなら、遠くへ行けばいい。そのための助けが必要なら、私はいくらでも手を貸そう。
Yeah, I could definitely see Sorako wanting to get away from all this.
成田くんも逃げ出したりする？
残念ながら、私は逃げる道を選べない人間らしい。立ちふさがるものを打ち破らなければ前に進めない。そんな愚かな将軍だ。
Sorako looked down as though thinking, then looked at me without a hint of hesitation in her gaze.
髪とか目とかを見ていればわかると思うけど、僕は成田くんもあったあの母の娘じゃないんだ。
Whoa, really? No way, Sorako. You're kidding me. That wasn't your real mom? Crazy.
僕は父、新山の愛人の娘です。父は義母との間に子供ができなかったので、僕の母が死んでから桂木家の子供として引き取ったんだ。正直僕の立場は桂木家ではあまり良くなかったんだけど。
Well, it's nice to finally hear this from her. What an understatement. I more or less knew how Sorako ended up in the Katsuragi since I'd looked into it before returning to Japan. A few years after they'd taken in Sorako, Shinzen's Katsuragi's business started undergoing extremely rapid growth. He destroyed much of his competition and greatly expanded his wealth. The fortune couldn't be explained by what he'd taken from Mikado alone. I could only guess, but I assumed it coincided with Sorako's halo emerging. I didn't know the specific details of what happened in the Katsuragi household, but I was certain that Shinzen, greedy as he was, used Sorako. He took advantage of his monster daughter's power. Sorako was a more peaceful girl than most. Bringing so many people to ruin must have been hellish torture in her eyes. He not only took the lives of my innocent sister and family, but trampled all over Sorako's life. I could not tolerate that, especially from someone related to her. I felt a sudden urge to barge straight into his mansion and dispose of him after cursing him until my throat was dry. But it was too early for that, and so I had to keep my emotions from shaking my composure.
僕、スクールに来てから変わることができた。父や母が僕をここに入れたのは全寮制だから厄介払いができるぐらいのつもりだったかもしれないけど、でもここで今まで知らない世界と出会えた。
You know, it sounded like it was good for both parties. It was good for them because they got rid of you, and unfortunate as that is, you know, that's just how it is. And it sounds like you got a new perspective, right? So that's really nice. She said that with a deep sense of conviction that I hadn't expected from her. It honestly confused me. That's kind of what we've been hearing, especially like earlier in Tamao's route. We heard that she really built a strong connection after not having a good family situation. And now we're hearing it pretty much from Sorako too. It sounds like this whole group of girls and now guys has been really like beneficial for everybody here, which I'm glad to hear.
サクたちのこともそうだし、このスクールのこともそう。僕は後天性の HMI だから、最初はどうしたらいいのかわからなかった。特に母はすごく気味悪がって力の使い方だってわからなくて。怖かった。世界はこんなに傷だらけだったんだって思い知った。触れただけで血が噴き出して、誰も彼も傷ついて。
Soroko's voice lost all emotion as it quivered.
人間は生きながら死んでいる。誰も生きてない。動いているだけで命のないテク。
Well, it's kind of sad to hear her like speak this way because I think this is a very pessimistic view of life. Like obviously you're gonna have wounds in life, right? And that's kind of what her power is all about. Like everyone's gonna have them. Everyone's gonna have things that maybe went wrong or, you know, traumatic experiences, negative experiences. I think, especially in the world of like technology now that we have, it's a lot more vocalized. It's a lot more commonplace to talk about them too. I think that's why you have that idea maybe that it's more commonplace nowadays. I feel like mental illness and things like that, we think of that as being more widespread, and we're like trying to find the reason behind that. And it could be just because we're more vocal about it. We're more you know, knowledgeable that it exists, that it happens, and that it's pretty commonplace, and it probably always was. We just lived in a different society that couldn't necessarily talk about that as much, you know. It's a very interesting perspective, and I feel bad that Sorako has this idea that the world is just kind of meaningless and, you know, people are just, as she says, lifeless puppets, when I don't feel like that's true at all. There are some people who have been hurt but are living awesome lives, and it's not because everything's going their way in life, it's because they're choosing to be happy despite what's happened to them. She said that as though tearing off the face of a person would reveal a mannequin made of white acrylic fiber.
でも違うって教えられた。ここへ来てみんなと出会って時野さんから教わった。この力にもきっと意味を見出せるって。
She looked straight at me. Her eyes were empty no longer. There was human passion in them.
今の僕には家に居場所がなかったとしても別の居場所があるから。
Well, Sorako, I'm glad your perspectives improved a little bit. That was why she wouldn't run. Sorako Katsuragi declared that she belonged at the academy.
そうか。君を侮ってつまらないことを言ってしまったようだ。ソラコは自分のいるべき場所をとっくに見出しているのだね。
I responded to her bright smile with a smile of my own. It was a smile of blessing, aimed at the blissful story she'd made for herself, as well as a smile that conveyed the joy I felt when I heard her words. Sorako was no longer suffering. She'd found peace and bliss. Okay, that's good. I was kind of confused by her words. It sounded like she still felt that way. After 7 long years, she'd finally saved herself. However, my smile was also deceitful, for Tokino and Narita aspired to destroy the peaceful place where she belonged. No matter who would grieve, bleed, or writhe, my hand would not falter in bringing down the hammer of justice.
だから僕もう逃げないから。
Uh-oh.
成田くん。
She's confessing to us right here, isn't she?
いや、待ちたまえ。
Sorako broke her seize, feeling an incoming shift in the exchange. I extended my palm forward to
君が
stop
何
her.
をしようとしているのか全くわからないが、とにかく今は落ち着いて待つのだ。早急な判断は身を滅ぼす。物事には順序と深い思慮こそが必要なのだよ。
僕ちゃんと考えたから。それでもう逃げないって決めたから。
As I slowly backed away, not even breaking my seiza, Sorako drew closer and closer. I was in a bad position, and it didn't take long for me to be against the wall.
落ち着いてこのぬいぐるみでも抱くのはどうだろう。呼吸、ゲプの呼吸法を教えよう。精神統一に効果がある。これ以上近づいたら大変なことになってしまう。
Dang. Narita's really trying to avoid her.
僕ちゃんと落ち着いてる。
Our hands joined and we pushed them toward each other. I could have easily overpowered her, but Sorako was frail and I didn't want to hurt her.
成田くん、おとなしく僕の話を聞いて。
You know, I'm kind of tired and it's like, you know, it's kind of late. We should go to bed, Sorako. Yeah, we should go to bed, you know. This was a really good conversation and let's continue it never.
待ちたまえ。むしろ君の方こそ私の話を聞いてくれないか。
I didn't know she was on adrenaline or some other drug, but she seemed unexpectedly strong and refused to let go. Why does she have to be on a drug to be strong? How stubborn. Then again, young Sorako is also the type who always refused to budge.
エルちゃんにも言われたんだ。待ってるだけのヒロインなんて勝手にどっかに行かれたり捨てられて終わりだって。自分から攻略しないとダメだって。
You know, don't listen to Arrow. Arrow's not a good source of information or philosophy or anything like that. You know, don't listen to her at all. She just memes and talks about game stuff.
俺高崎エル、こんな絡めてからこの私をここまで追い詰めるとは。
You know, it's not like this is a visual novel or anything. You know, don't listen to her words. Our hands were still joined. She pushed forward, I pushed back. She pushed forward, I pushed back. It was basically a stalemate.
こうなったらおとなしくしてくれないと大声出すよ。
No, no.
来たら
No.
大変なことになっても知らないから。
Don't you dare, Sorako. Don't you dare, because you know what will happen if they see this scene. They will come in and they will blame me for it, even though it is your fault.
なんと狡猾な。
A single lapse in my concentration made me lose my balance, and we both fell to the floor. I was on my back with Sorako above me. Her earnest eyes met mine. Whoa, okay. I felt her pounding heart through my skin. I knew this warmth and sound long ago. It was a fragment of the small yet unforgettable paradise. I reached for her hair as if it was only natural.
黄金でできた雫のようだね。
そんな褒め方するの成田くんだけだよ。
みんな物の価値が分かっていないのだよ。
Oh, how late I was. This was a simple fact I'd known since long ago, but I kept it sealed and only realized the truth at the exact moment.
正直に言おう。私は君のことを大切に思っているよ。誰より。この世界に残ったたった一つの宝石のように。
This is a very sudden shift in how he feels. I mean, I know he's kind of felt some things and have kind of hinted at it, but it's very sudden of him to be like embracing it at this moment. It seemed more obvious when I voiced my thoughts. It was a faint feeling that I had 7 years ago, despite the weight of the time that had passed and despite all the irreversible changes that alone hadn't faded.
僕も成田くんのこと考えただけでこんなにドキドキして止まらなくなる。自分でも不思議なくらい。
So we're in the childhood friend route, huh?
成田くんはいつでも僕に大事なものをくれるんだ。一番困ってる時にやってきて助けてくれて忘れられないものをくれて愛してます。
Oh.
誰よりもこんな気持ちきっともう二度とない。
I mean, Sorako, as much as I appreciate that, like, your first love in life isn't necessarily who you're gonna end up with, and most of the times it won't be. Like, so don't count on that, okay? You feel these strong emotions, and you feel like you love somebody, right? I hate to tell you, but I've loved many different people in my life. Like, romantically, of course. Like, I think my wife was number 4. Like, I loved 3 other girls before her. And that's not to say that I would give her up for any of those other 3 girls, right? But you go through the motions of love, and you can go through that over and over. Like, there's not just one person out there for you. So don't say that you'll never feel that again, because I'm sure if he wasn't around, it could be somebody else. Like, there's many different people out there. There's somebody you'll get along with enough to love them enough in that way. I have maybe a controversial view on that, but I'm like, I love my wife and I want to be with her for the rest of my life, obviously. But if for some reason, like, it didn't work out between us, I feel like I could have fallen in love again, you know? Like, that's just how it is. Like, you can build love again. I don't want to. I'm just saying I could have, you know? So let's hope my wife doesn't hear that, because she'll take that the wrong way. Love was a sentiment Avengers had no need for, a fragment of humanity I was certain I had long since abandoned. However, abandoning it would have been a mistake. Only humans could carry out revenge. If I had truly disposed of my human heart, then I was little more than a machine with one function in mind: vengeance. This was mine. This rage, hatred, grief, conflict, everything was mine, and I'd planned to risk it all to complete the solemn prayer for the dead.
だが、私は君の行為を受けられない。その資格がない。
Oh my gosh. I hate people who say, like, they're not good enough for somebody, or that they don't have the right to. Like, shut up.
どうしてそんなこと言うの？時野さんに止められたから？ それとも母の言いつけでこんなことしてると思ってる？
I don't know. It doesn't matter. If you guys love each other, that's all that matters. Like, it doesn't matter. Nobody else matters, okay? This Tokino, Tama, then screw them.
そういう意味ではないのだよ。
Shinri and Narita have planned to accomplish his goals no matter the cost. I planned to kill her father and bring ruin to the one place she wished to protect. Forming a deeper connection with her was simply unforgivable. I can respect that. I really can.
私は空子が考えているよりもずっとひどい人間だよ。
Yeah, he's pretty much planning on ripping out everything that makes her happy in life, besides maybe him.
理由を教えて。
I could give you two.
それは
But yeah, I can't tell you. Sorry. I couldn't control my own expression. I touched her cheek with my fingertips. Her Caucasian blood made it as pale and smooth as porcelain. I think that's supposed to be saying that she's Caucasian. The whiteness made her skin appear cold, but there was certain warmth to it.
君に幸せでいてほしい。
You know, Narita, I can respect, though, what you're saying right now. I really can. Like, I'm glad he's taking this viewpoint. He's like, hey, I'm gonna hurt you really bad in life, even though I don't want to. It's not on purpose. It's not targeted towards you, but some of the actions I'm gonna take will hurt you, and I don't think it's right if we're together. Despite all the deceit clouding them, those words came from the heart. I remained entirely aware of the fact that I planned to destroy your happiness.
言うのはこれが最後だ。私にはもう近づくな。道が違うのだから。
I wonder if she's gonna push back.
僕は成田くんがどんな人でも構わない。
I don't know. I'm trying to understand if Sorako just genuinely loves him so much that, like, nothing that he could do would matter. Or if she's just being very naive and doesn't realize how serious the things that he's planning on doing are.
僕、今までに叶えたい願いなんて、僕は願いなんて叶わないって知ってたから。でも、願えば叶うことだってあるんだ。だから、これは2つ目なんだよ、成田くん。成田くんと一緒にいたい。どんな秘密があっても、本当はどんな人でも構わない。
Her teary eyes make me lose my words.
僕はあなたのことを愛してるから。
Dang, I have such conflicting feelings about this scene. It's really tender and sweet, but at the same time, it's like this tug of war against doing the right thing. And, you know, I guess just accepting her love, you know? Like, you're trying to accept, do I do the right thing and break it off with her? Because I'm going to hurt her. Like, this is not going to end well if you accept her love. But on the other hand, he loves her back in a way, right? So he chose option number 2. I can tell with 3 words what option he chose. We expressed our desire for each other as though all restraints had been broken. Before I knew it, I was on top of Sorako. She raised her jaw and kissed me with the passion of a person in a blizzard seeking warmth. I knew this act was sinful, but I couldn't help but embrace her tighter. Gosh, this is so... just a crazy scene. Like, he knows he's doing her wrong by giving in like this. But he just... it's so... his feelings are so, like, passionate that he just can't resist, you know? Because he... yeah, obviously he feels the same way. Making good use of a moment, I got to breathe. I whispered that into her ear in order to prevent any regrets. I loved her. With all my heart, I did. That was why I spoke a certain oath.
もっと近くに。
For all I knew, she may not have heard me, but I burned that promise deep into her. Sorako placed her hands around my neck and basically clung to me with all of her strength. For a moment, I felt like I regained the peace I'd lost so long ago.
もう離さないから。離さないで。
Our lips parted, and she showed me a smile full of love and joy. It was akin to a blooming flower, and her rosy cheeks made it all the more
い
beautiful.
つか誓いの時がやってくるまでそうすると約束しよ
And there he goes again. He's putting this in, just like he did in Tamao's route, where they're gonna work together until their paths branch, right? And this was gonna come back to bite him in the butt. This was gonna bite her in the butt even more, though. I kissed her yet
う君
again.
は誰よりも愛らしいとも美しく豊かで安らぎがある
そんなこと言い過ぎ。
Sorako had a right to act more confident. Apparently, even living here in the academy and being an Etwala hadn't made her believe in herself.
ならば自信を持てるように私がどれほど空子に端的しているのか見せてあげよう
やっぱり恥ずかしいな。
We were lying in bed in each other's
やっ
embrace.
ぱり恥ずかしいからお布団かぶらせて。
熱くはないかね恥じることなどないというのに
こういうのはまた別に恥ずかしい時なんだから。
うん難しいことだね
成田くん。
Sensitive as she was, Sorako asked me that question. She really was a considerate girl.
いやなんでもない些細なことだよ
I gazed at her flushed, lovable face and thought that this peace wouldn't last long. I planned to fulfill my oath very soon. I prayed that when the time came, she wouldn't hesitate. Just as Shinri Narita had to do what he had to do, Sorako Katsuragi had to make the right choice by herself. Sorako whispered some words to me in a saccharine voice.
今すごくドキドキしてる。これからどうなるんだろうって。今日が幸せだから明日はもっと幸せになりたいって思えるんだね。こんな気持ち初めて。この気持ちがずっと続いてほしいな。
私もそう思うよ空子
I hugged Sorako tight, making her twist her body in joy. Thus, the dazzling sunlight that signaled a brand new day arrived. I felt like I had had a good dream for once, but I forgot its contents. It was 5 in the morning, normally almost time for my routine training. Sorako was still sleeping in my bed. However, I didn't want to wake her, so I decided to head to the dorm's garden. I walked through the front entrance, breathing in the early morning air. Oh frick, she doesn't know, does she? And inside I found Saku, who looked as though she was suffering from sleep deprivation, a cold, and her period all at the same time. She had the aura of a dead
おはよう
sunfish.
サク本日はとても気分のいい朝なのだが私の気のせいでなければ君の体調がひどく悪いように見える
成田真理。
Her voice sounded as dead as the rest of her. It felt akin to the city of Detroit right after it became a ghost town due to the decline of its auto industry and lack of funds.
私昨日寝苦しくて深夜に起きてキッチンに出て行ったんだけど。
うん何の問題もないだろう
Saku's room was in the corner of the second floor, while the kitchen was to the left after going down the stairs. While walking down the stairs to the first floor, retrieving the soft drink called Dr. Pepper, and returning to her room was a simple
もちろん
task.
繊細な君が夜中に起きてきた時に防音壁の向こうにあるわずかな物音が気にかかって奥の部屋まで様子を見に行ったりしたのでなければだが
He's just describing it.
言ったわよ。すごく言ったわよ。偉そうにしたのでなければだがじゃないわよ。
Oh gosh. She heard everything. She heard it all. After dressing me down with tear-filled eyes and a red face, she started bawling.
人前で涙など見せるものではない。それにこの絵面ではまるで私が泣かせてしまったようではないかね。
Pretty much.
ようではないかねじゃないわよ。
She suddenly seemed rather intimidating.
朝から情緒不安定のようだね。
誰のせいだと思ってやがんだ。死なせるぞ。
I love when Saku gets like upset about something though, it's so funny.
敬愛すべきクラウン筆頭殿。君は時折やけに柄が悪くなるでしょう。
Like, I definitely think Saku is like the main girl that he's gonna be with. I think there's a reason her route is last. Like, she is like kind of the canon heroine, right? But I don't know. I just love having conversations like this with her.
あかましい。あなたって人はそらこになんてことを。
Jealous?
私としたことが扉の向こうに隠れている策の気配を見落とすとは不覚だった。どのあたりから出ばがめっていたのかね。
Narita.
熱い吐息を吐きながら扉に耳を当てて声を盗み聞き、こっそり友愛にふけっていたのかね。
誰が祝いだ。
言っておくが、両者の同意と覚悟の上のことだ。君がとやかく言うことはあまりないのだよ。無論君が友人としてではなく女性として空子を愛していたのであれば、この結末に男として一発殴られるくらいのことはしよう。
Narita, what are you implying here?
それはない。
私も些細なことは気にしない主義だが、問答無用でガゼルパンチを入れてから言うべきセリフではないような気がするのだが、どうだろう。
Gosh, Narita's so good at flipping it back at her.
ええ、そうね。殴ってから言うのもなんだけど、あなたの言う通りだわ。私が口を出すことじゃないから、もう一発殴りたいけど我慢するわ。
Oh, how considerate of you.
だけど、私は空子の友達だから。万一あなたがあの子を不幸にするようなことがあれば、たとえ空子がかばっても容赦しません。そのつもりで。
確かに承知した。
それと寮の風紀にも関わりますから、くれぐれも玉緒やエルにバレるような真似はやめてください。
That's nice. She's kind of accepting it. She's just like, don't make a big deal out of it, okay?
いいとも。ところで私はそろそろ日課を始めようと思うのだが。
日課？ここで？
部屋には空子がまだ眠っているのでね。
I knew that I was going to get a good reaction out of her.
構わないかね。
いいわよ。好きにしなさいよ。
感謝する。では。
I prepared to perform my daily breathing exercise.
パンツまで脱ぐな
Saku appeared to be in an especially bad mood that morning. I have no idea why. We had choreography first, though due to the earlier accident, the building had been closed, so we no longer had practical lessons. Aside from us 6 étoiles, there were premiers and above in the classroom, making up a total of 40 people. About 50% of the students at the academy were choreophies. Choreophies were essentially HMIs who could deliver results that a normal human could. They had, for example, halos that didn't do much more than enhance a finger enough to pierce a plank. Most of their halos had low power and lacked precision. It meant that they were immature, and so, the academy focused on advancing them to higher stages. However, regardless of how powerful they were, it didn't have to be said that they were extremely dangerous in general society. 30% of the rest were soulless. Premiers and above were the ones with obviously powerful halos and only made up 20% of the academy's student body. In that specific choreography class, we all had premiers and above, who you could call the main force of the academy's HMIs. But that powerful preface meant nothing to the maidens decorating this garden of learning.
それでどんな味ですか？レモンですか？それともイチゴでしょうか？
Arrow.
飲んだだけに腐った牛乳とかありえますか？自分それなら超最悪だと思います。
Are you all talking about what I think you're talking about?
それは
Why is it
僕
Japanese?
初めてだったからそんなに余裕なかったし。
嘘だ。成田とかがありえねえ。
Somehow you should know.
それはと
I
も
mean, you
か
don't
くさ
know, but you should know.
どうだったの？息するのを忘れるとかマジ？
Can't believe they're actually talking about this. So gross. While that girl's talk bloomed, Saku, who was seated at my side, had her face on the desk.
何もかも完全に広まっているようだが。
空子、成田の部屋。
Gosh, the worst person. That helped me understand how everyone had found out. Though we lived in a digital age, social hacking was still a thing to fear. Ancient wisdom said that you could not put a door over the mouth, and that remained true to this very day.
空子は男子にも女子にも人気あったから注意しなさい。
Oh. I heard whispers all over the classroom and felt glares pierce me from several directions.
どうして嬉しそうにするの？もしかすると挑んでくるなら返り討ちにできて最高とか週刊ステップ連載漫画の主人公みたいなことを考えてるんじゃないでしょうね。
君は私をバトルマニアの変態か何かと思っているのか。
変態には違いないだろ。
Yeah, you're pretty on the spot.
愛し合う人が周囲の人気の的で羨望の目をひたすら注がれるというのはいい気分だね。
正直すぎるわよ。
You're too honest. Miss Tokino arrived right when Saku hit the desk and stood up. A few seconds later, the bell that signaled the start of class resounded. Yeah, let's just go to class. Let's just learn something, okay? Besides what I did last night. The recording ended and light returned to the classroom. A strange silence filled the space. Everyone, students, étoiles, and even Miss Tokino remained silent. No one knew exactly what to say.
以上が記録です。本日の課題達成者は桂木空子さんでした。
What the? What did she win? She repeated what everyone knew just to buy time, since she needed to make sense of the situation.
興味深い結果になったね。
Gosh, I forgot you were here. Taigi, what do you think about this situation?
確かに
Curious.
興味深くはある。
There was no need to state that I shared Miss Tokino's sentiment. The choreography took 2 hours. During the first hour, we had a simple test here in the school building, while during the second, we examined a recording of the test. The activity was a search, much like the one we had when the accident happened. We had to retrieve a target based on the provided name. We weren't told what it was. It could have been an object, data, creature, person, anything really. All we knew was the name they gave us. As the representatives of the students, all the étoiles took part, myself and Taigi included, of course. And the winner was...
彼女は何もしていなかったね。
Indeed, Sorako simply happened to win before anyone realized it.
サクも戸惑っているようだ。
仕方のないところだろう。記録を見ても空子は何もしていない。
Or to be more precise, Sorako had done something, but no amount of examination helped us understand what had happened. Her recorded actions seemed no different from her actions in other tests. She moved through the designated area, searched for the object, and acted appropriately. According to the video, Saku had found the item first. Various events happened during the remaining time frame. The objective changed hands many times until it finally found its way to Sorako. The time limit then ran out, and that was that. I, Sorako, and Tamao all had many chances to win. However, that hadn't happened. Had Sorako won by accident? Well, perhaps. It could have been a stroke of luck. However, had that truly been enough to help her come out on top?
すごいですね、桂木さん。
はい、なんだか心も体も軽くって。
Huh, I wonder why.
今後も頑張ってください。あなたはエトワールなのですから。
If only Miss Tokino knew. She probably wouldn't have approved of how it happened. Tokino went from being perplexed to showing joy. She seemed so happy that outsiders would have assumed she was celebrating her own victory.
空子、今までは低空飛行っつうか安定してたけどいまいち弾けない感じだったけど。今日は違いますね。語彙の少ないヤンキーの代わりに自分が語るならやはり 大人になると一味違うというやつでしょうか。
Of course, Arrow was like, okay, sex.
うっさい。そんな一味いんねえよ。
うっさい、すごい、やばい、マジすごい、マジやばい。
What?
自分簡単ヤンキー語講座やれます。
The reason behind Soroko's change in mental state was probably...
成田
Apparently, the insignia of the crowns have reached the same conclusion I
礼
did.
には及ばないとも。
No need to thank me. Oh, I'm sorry. That just cracked me up. Oh my gosh. He takes immediate credit for it.
誰が言うか。だいたい
Oh,
成長期のハ
that
ロー
was
は心理的
freaking
影響を
hilarious.
受けやすいからって、これがハローによるものだって決まったわけじゃないでしょ。
全く同感だ。
The change in Sorako last night could have affected her halo. Still, that didn't explain this result.
はいはい、マジ真剣に見てたらすごい言語中枢がマジやばいですね。マジでマジで。
お前いっぺん閉めてやろうか。
She's just pissing off Tamao today.
マジでやばくてすごく怖いです。マジで。
Gosh, this whole conversation is so great.
静かにしなさい、あなたたち。
Saku scolded the two individuals who were messing around despite the tense situation in the classroom, and a second later, the bell that signaled the end of class rang. The look Miss Tokino shot at me as she left reminded me of one you'd give a bug that landed on your precious flower.
大義、もしも近日中に私が失踪するようなことがあれば、犯人は時の女子だと先に言って
I
お
love
く。
how he's telling Taigi.
君の言うことはいつもよくわからないが、まあ、わかったよ。
Thanks, Taigi. He made a face like an old friend and nodded. Suddenly, we're friends with him now. We go back and forth. We moved out to the hallway, and Sorako, who stood next to the teacher's platform, ran up to us.
ま、やるじゃんか。空子は見た目の割に地味だったから心配してたんだよな。
Tamao left those simple words of encouragement behind as she walked off on her own. Recently, she'd been acting solo almost all of the time outside of classes.
なんですこの好成績。どんなチートを使ったのですか。
Sorako ignored Eru, who was waiting for her at the entrance, and walked by as if she wasn't even there. She then started running and even skipped as she took her last few steps. Naturally, she was coming to me.
どうだった僕。
She's like, Tamao's opinion? Nah. Eru's opinion? I don't even know who you are. Freaking Narita, what did you think?
素晴らしかったよ。見事なものだ。特に大きく跳躍すると、しなやかな客船がチラチラするのが最高にいい。
I don't think that's what she was asking.
スルーかよ。
You could see the joy on her flushed face. She usually remained calm, so seeing that new side of her was a true delight.
頑張ったから。
Everyone had already heard about us, so she ignored the onlookers, clung to me, and rubbed her cheek into my chest. A pleasant, bittersweet smell reached my nose. I caressed her head. Her foreign hair was akin to golden droplets that shone just like they had all those years ago. I looked around and saw Saku and Taigi leave the classroom.
久しぶりに面白い講義の時間だったよ。
Oh yes, very interesting. Saku's just like so lost about this whole situation.
サク
Doesn't know what to think.
何？
She gasped and looked around, which made it seem like she'd spaced out. Was she lost in thought? No, the expression on her face appeared far more colder than that. Who was she looking at? Me? No, it felt like she was looking at a thorn in her side, and her eyes were directed at.
どうかした？
なんでもないとも。
I had to have been imagining it. Saku hadn't felt well since that morning. It had to have been that.
サク、どうかした？浮かない顔をしていたみたいだけど。
A startling sound resounded through the halls. Sorako had extended her hand to Saku out of consideration, but it was now directed elsewhere, for Saku had coldly pushed it away. Whoa, Saku, what's with your sudden change in attitude here?
別に。
The unexpectedly ice-cold response made Soraka go stiff. Eru and Taigi looked at them to see what went wrong. Her reaction was so unexpected that even I remained still for a moment.
私ごめんなさい、ソラコ。
I don't know. Is Saku, like, really that jealous? Like, what's going on here? She grabbed Sorako's hand as though she herself was surprised by her
なん
action.
か朝からぼーっとしてて、今日はすごかったわね。私も負けてられない。
Saku Otonashi smiled the way she usually did. Relieved, Sorako squeezed her hand back.
ありがとう、サク。
That was
僕
very
からも
strange.
祝福を送らせてくれないか。素晴らしかったよ。
ありがとう、大義。
本当に幸せそうで何よりだ。
Taigi then moved quickly, but in a way that made it impossible for Sorako to tell what he was up to, that he was up to something. He arrived right next to my ear.
そして彼女に力を与えた君との愛情にこそより大きな祝福を送りたいと思う。
We're back to the thing of us looking away from each other.
わー、パチパチ、プレイスユー。
Bless you.
廊下ではやめなさい。時の先生に睨まれるわよ。
Amused, Eru clapped and played along with Taigi for once. Sorako formed a troubled expression and rubbed her temple.
もう嫌だな。
It's gonna be so weird going into Eru's route and, like, seeing people's reactions to us dating. I feel like that's gonna be so strange. Sorako stood next to me and linked our arms. A pale hallway where the two of us stood side by side. It was akin to a scene I dreamed of when I was young. Her face was flushed with happiness, and she looked like a bride ready to throw her wedding bouquet. It was far too bright and warm for me. It made me hope for the impossible, hope that this continued forever. However, I knew there was no eternity, and that this paradise would eventually end. After all, that was Shinri Narita's goal.
おめでとう、成田。
ありがとう大義。君の祝福に感謝を。
His eyes, which only I saw, were akin to sharp daggers. He walked 2 steps back in the most natural manner, then stood back to back with me.
いや、僕も嬉しいよ。実のところ、空子と幼馴染でね。彼女があんな顔で笑うのは7年ぶりだ。
Oh. The way he's saying that makes me think he's gonna start connecting things. A voice as heavy as mercury. I couldn't see what kind of face he was making, but I had a good guess.
失われた時間は私が取り戻してやるべきなのだろうね。
Taigi's response was as soft as always.
振り返っても意味などないよ。人の命は今の幸福と共にある。誰しもそうあるべきじゃないのかな。
Those were words that tried to seduce me many times. I closed my eyes and opened them again. No matter how much I questioned it, my resolve would not shake.
振り返らなければ得られないものもある。前しか見えぬものは前を向かぬものと同じだけ盲目だ。
I could feel Soraka shake within my arms. It was slight, but it seemed to be an expression of fear. Saying nothing, she continued to cling to me. I silently embraced her slender waist as well.
オルフェウスの神話を知っている？彼は死を超えて再会できた妻を失ってしまった。振り返らなければ奇跡を手にできたのに。
それは過ちだったのか。私は必然だったと思う。愛していたから振り向いたのだ。オルフェウスは神ではなく人として自らのなすべきことを果たした。何度やり直してもきっとオルフェウスは振り向くだろ
う。失うとしても
失うとしても。
大丈夫だよ。
Very cryptic conversation.
僕はきっと幸せになる。
Sorako didn't even look back at Taigi as she said that. Not even a hint of hesitation seemed to dwell within her words. Saku and Eru looked at us, curious about the subject of our conversation.
君たちの行く末に平穏と祝福を。
Sorako, Taigi, and I honestly felt as though time had reversed. But I knew the vacuum between Taigi and I would never be filled. The season of paradise had passed, and the rainbow of days long gone was nowhere in sight. After 7 long years, Shinri and Narita had become an avenger. After school, Sorako and I walked for the campus grounds, showered by the evening sun. Sokka and the others were in the dorm, so for that day at least, we planned to spend time together like this.
べったりくっついた状態のまま歩くのは気分がいい。見慣れた校内をあてもなく歩き回るだけでも、空子と二人ならまた違った発見がある。
僕、このまま宇宙にだって行けそうだよ。
歩いていくと月まででも飲まず食わずで10年以上かかってしまう。少し遠いね。
空気読めない成田くんもすごく素敵。
No, Naruto's just always trying to lighten the mood. As we walked, the sun traveled further down, and by the time the academy became a sea of crimson light, we arrived at the Rose Garden.
いい場所だね、ここ。今までそんなに気に留めたことなかったけど。
黄昏が花を彩って。
It felt like a field of gold akin to Sorako's hair. It truly stirred one's poetic heart. Not saying a word, we just stood there together and gazed at it. This moment of burning even fall was akin to the thing linking us. It made me think of absurd thoughts, like this scene extending far beyond the horizon. I then noticed that the dazzling twilight had passed, and the dim curtain of darkness fell upon the world. As though laughing at our foolish romance, a gray tower stood tall within the old forest beyond the Rose Garden. In a way, it was the symbol of the academy, and it reminded me of exactly who I was.
今朝のコレオグラフでは何があったのかね。
それが僕もよくわからなくて。
According to Miss Tokino, the first time a person activated their halo, or in other words, underwent an ascension, they often didn't remember it. Essentially, a person's consciousness had trouble keeping up with the fact that their brain had developed a new function. Was it the same with Sorako? Had she had trouble keeping up with her
せっ
halo?
かく二人きりなのにムードのないことを聞いてしまったね。今日はゆっくりとデートしておきたかったのに。
今日は？明日は何かある？
Sorako is really sharp.
仕事の都合で一日学園を離れる。外出許可をもらっているのだよ。さて、もっと子供にふさわしい話をしよう。そう、例えば特殊相対性理論の解釈についてなどどうだろう。
ダメに決まってるだろう。
As I stared at the rose and thought up a subject, Sorako put on her glasses.
今最高潮に素敵ムードに盛り上がろうと思っていたところだったのに、空気を読めなどと理不尽は言わないが、多少出番を考えてはどうかね。
お前。
She directed near murderous hostility at me. She was never friendly around me, but she was never this antagonistic either.
その目、何かあったのかね。
あったのかじゃなくて、しただろ、やっただろ。昨日の夜、死ぬほど痛い目に遭わせたろ。
Really? I would have thought he would have been pretty gentle, but...
おお、じゃない。
She looked at me with intimidating eyes. This wasn't the first time it happened to me that day.
なるほど。言われてみれば。
As far as NPD cases went, Sorako's was special. They did sleep, but they were active even if they weren't in control, which meant that if we did things like that...
空子の裏側にいる君もウハウハというわけなのだね。
Instead of responding, she launched a twisting right hook, which I dodged by tilting my head to the side.
私が不快だったのは、まあいいだろう。
さっき怒っていなかったかね。何やらコークスクリューブローが飛んできたような気がするのだが。
幻覚だろ。
ところで空子はどうしたのかね。
お前と話があるから代わってもらったんだよ。一つだけ言っておく。まかり間違って空子を不幸にしたら この前の約束を覚えてる
I don't know. I make a lot of promises that I'm not gonna keep.
少なくと
Which one
も
were you
今
talking
の
about?
ところ彼女は不幸ではないと思うが、もしかすると私の目の錯覚だろうか。
まあね、今のところはそうだ。超ハッピーって感じでそばで見てていたい。じゃなくて、まあなんだ。
そういうことなら問題はあと一つだな。以前から気になっていたのだが、君はいいのかね。
私？どうして私が？
She didn't really seem to get it. It was as though we weren't in sync.
ソラコの同居人である君がソラコを案じるのは理解できる。しかし君自身はどうなのだろう。仮に私とソラコが結ばれるとしたなら、当然君も一緒にいることになる。だから尋ねているのだよ。君は、そう、ソラコの相手が私であることに不満はないのかね。いや、心身ともに完璧である私への不満がないというのであれば、それも当然理解できるが、人間とは完璧なものにさえ不満を抱かずには。
関係ないだろ。
Her response was curt and unexpected.
不満はないならともかく、関係ないとは。
In a way, her response was intriguing. A personality was one sole vantage point into the world, but Sorako Katsuragi had two of them with her. She was both an HMI and a case of NPD. Was this perhaps the reason why Tokino Yomase thought she was a candidate for whatever came next?
私はただの交代人格なんだよ、成田真理。生まれてすらいないものを人間と呼ぶな。ここにいるのは空子の影だ。
私の知る限り、ソラコはそうは思っていないようだが。
あの子は寂しい時に隣を埋めてくれた私は友達か何かみたいに思ってるんだろ
いけないのかね。この問題については私はソラコに味方しよう。君はソラコと一緒にいるが、ソラコとは違う。自分で考え、私とこうして話をする。
だから人間だというのはただの気の迷いだ。私はお前や空子とは決定的に違うんだ。私には家庭がない。この私へ至るための道のりをどんな過去も持っていない。
Kind of interesting. I mean, in a way, since you started at a certain point, your perspective would be different because obviously all of your past memories lead up to you being the person you are today. But if you like cut out some of that stuff, if you cut out like that whole first portion of your life, that would really change you as a person, wouldn't it? There's no path or past that led to becoming me. I mean, I think that's true, but you still progress. You don't have past progression, but you have current progression. You're still progressing and developing new experiences. And I would even say she's probably developing experiences differently than Sorako. Because of her personality, her impression of things is different. So that's going to eventually lead her to becoming even more of a different person than Sorako, between Sorako B and her.
ある日突然この私として現れた。
Yeah. I mean, I get what she's saying. She's like, hey, I wasn't born into this world. Like, I just kind of happened to be there.
私にあるのは知識だけだ。初めて見た夕日も触れた水の冷たさも遠くから聞こえてくる鐘の音も知っているが知っているだけだ。
That's interesting. Sorako B insisted that progression in past was the proof of a human. There was no meaning in the fruits of results, and that path alone was mankind's treasure. She was as right as fresh winter snow was pure. Joy, pain, loneliness, limits, all of those were precious things added up to create a human in its purest form. Without just one of those, they would become something different. And in that case, could a being that didn't have a past truly be considered its own entity? No, said Sorako B. I thought of asking what she thought of amnesiacs, but didn't. She probably didn't care about whether or not someone had memories of experiencing something. Sorako B actually had no past, period. Alternative personalities were warped copies born from the original imitations controlled by the machine we called the brain. You could say all the events that were traumatizing to Sorako that eventually created Sorako B could be her backstory.
ならばやはり君は人間だな。
お前私の話を聞いてなかったのか？
君はすでに過去を持っているのだから、空子と共に過ごして何年になるのだろう。私も知らないその時間は君を証明する過程ではないのかね。
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe at that exact moment you were created, you didn't have a past, but now you do.
君は過去なく現れたかもしれないが、人とは誰しもそうしたものだよ。過去とはあるものではない。自分の手で得ていくものだ。
Yeah, Narita's right.
本当に他人の話を聞かないやつだな。
She spat out those words with an irritated expression on her face.
交代人格は言ってしまえばバグだ。私はハローに目覚めた空子のトラウマから生まれたミスコード、脳というシステム、精神というプログラムの異常でしかないんだぞ。
All this time I didn't know what Sorako B was. I couldn't get a proper grasp of her. And of course I couldn't, since she even herself didn't define herself as a human.
私はようやく答えを得たよ。だから質問を変えるとしよう。君の幸はどこにあるのかね。
何の話をしてる？
覚えていないか？空子に言ったことだ。人の形は人の数だけある。人間とは数十億の狂気そのもの。過去がない程度の歪さで人ではないなどおこがましい。人間とは何者であっても幸福になる権利はあるのだと私は信じている。君という人間も空子のことを多少困らせるのだとしても自分の幸せを探してみればいい。
むちゃくちゃ言うなよ。私はただのサブだ。メインを困らせてどうする？
I mean, I will say she's being very considerate, because she knows that, like, hey, if I go and start doing my own things that are very uncharacteristic of you, like, I'm creating problems.
これは勝手な推測だが、空子は君に感謝している。そして、私も感謝を述べよう。
Until she came to the academy, Sorako's circumstances were extremely rough. And she'd only managed to keep herself together because of Sorako B. Sorako Katsuragi had made it this far because she wasn't alone.
人から感謝を捧げられる者が、どうして己の幸福を求めてはならないと言えるだろう。
With her glasses still on, Sorako B stood in place and blinked a few times.
求めよ、さもなくば答えられんだ。幸に思い当たらないなら、試しに今日から探してみてはどうかね。今までとは違う未知に挑むのは心躍るものだよ。
Huh, I didn't expect him to start quoting the Bible, because I'm pretty sure that's the scripture that says, Seek and you shall receive, knock and it shall be opened unto you, right?
お前絶対に頭がおかしい。
She badmouthed me, but that was adorable in its own right.
私は空子に幸せであってほしい。君と空子は共存しているのだから、二人とも幸せであるならその方がいい。至極当然の話ではないかね。
I mean, Narita is absolutely right. I feel like both of you should be happy.
君自身が消えたいと思っているのならともかく、そうではないのだろう。空子も君がいて不自由は感じていないようだし。
Yeah, coexist, and you should both try to be happy.
馬脚を表したな。仮に私が人間だと仮定しても、体は空子のもの一つだけだ。私が幸とやらを求めたら、それは空子の迷惑になるかもしれないぞ。
Well, I mean, I feel like you can find happiness wherever you're at, right? Like, there's plenty of stuff in life that's going to give you reason to be unhappy, but you can still choose to be happy in that situation, right? Like, that's hard, and that's not something most people probably can do, but that's something you can do if you try hard enough. If you really change your perspective, you can be happy no matter what's going on in your life. You know, losing a family member, you can still find joy in that. And for a lot of people, they do find ways. I think comfort from family and friends, you know, that helps you to be happy. I think for a lot of people, religion can help you become happy. You know, there's plenty of ways to do that, and be happy even in situations that are hard, maybe like times of war, or you just broke up with somebody, or, you know, financially you're not doing great. Maybe you're just not happy. Like there's some people who are just, and I've felt this way in my life before, where you're just not happy, even though you have no reason to be unhappy, right? You just feel like you're just not happy, no matter what's going on in your life. But you can do that without going out and pursuing your own things. I feel like Sorako B can find happiness in coexisting with Sorako herself, right? She grinned as she asked what I would think of that, looking like a devil testing a hero wandering through a wasteland.
さあどうさせるんだ。お前みたいに身勝手に振る舞って体を巡って争えばいいのか。
No, that's not what I think he wants.
君がどうするかは君次第だ。
I know he's saying that. I don't think that's what he's trying to imply, though.
結局人任せか。いい加減なやつめ。
私は君の言う通り、愚かで身勝手な人間だ。
Shinri Narita was an avenger who killed to sate his burning rage.
幸せとは自分でなければ見出せない。私であろうと、他の誰であろうと、そこには何もできないのだ。
Yes, thank you, Narita. That's what I was trying to say. Like, you are the one who chooses to be happy. And like, and I've said this before, I think in past videos, don't make happiness your goal in life. Because if it's your goal, until you reach that goal, you're gonna feel like you're not happy, right? You can feel happiness all along the way. Like, make good, wholesome, realistic goals. Like, if you want to, you know, work out more, or lose weight, or learn a language, you know, make something you can obtain. Like, don't make it too unrealistic. Work towards your goal, and just be consistent. Like, that's the best thing you can do when you're working towards a goal, is be consistent. And I'm saying this to myself. I'm very bad at this. There's definitely things I could improve on. And consistency is hard. Consistency is hard in a relationship. It's hard in life. Just in whatever you're trying to be consistent. It can be hard. Like, especially making videos on YouTube. That's very hard to be consistent. I'll say that.
誰かの幸福とは誰かの不幸でしかあがなえないものなのだ。人には幸を得ようとする権利はあるが、それは誰かを不幸にするという意味で。それでも人は幸せになってもいいのだと私は信じることにしている。
This is a very interesting conversation for them to be having. I feel like in some way it's preparing Sorako for what might be the inevitable death of her father, if he chooses to pursue that. I'm not sure if he's going to end up going through with it or not.
一人で幸せになるのが嫌だというのなら、二人で探してみてはどうかね。
Yeah, exactly. Do it together.
なんだ
You're kind of stuck with each other anyways. You don't have to do it separately.
幸せに決まった形はない。二人ならば見出せる幸というものも必ずあるだろう。
I wonder if Sorako B is going to end up falling in love with him too. It's going to make this weird triangle, but not. She did not respond, and I had no more words to share either. My own words weighed heavily on my mind. Could Shinri Narita find happiness with Sorako Katsuragi? I discarded the illusion from my heart, erasing it without even the slightest trace.
成田くん
Now the person I talked to is replaced by the usual Sorako.
彼女はどうしたのかね。
奥に引っ込んでその呼んでも出てこないみたい。
うん。すっかり嫌われてしまったようだ。
I don't think that's it.
そんなことはないと思う。成田くんの言った通り、何年も前辛かった頃は一人じゃなかったから耐えられたんだ。だから彼女には本当に感謝してる。
She spoke with rather evident affection in her voice. You could tell how much peace the other entity had granted her. She was to Sorako what Sorako was to Shinri Narita.
成田くんが 彼女にも優しくしてくれてすごく嬉しかった。きっと彼女も嬉しかったと思う。
She closed in on me with the agility of a songbird.
だからありがとう、成田くん。
Then she stood on her toes and gave me a kiss as light as a feather. That's nice. A good conversation. A lot going on. I love conversation like that. It really gets you thinking. It was completely dark out. As cold darkness began to paint the sky, wind began to blow, making Sorako shiver a bit. Her face was still warm thanks to our immense joy, however.
急に冷え込んできたね。昼間は暑いくらいなのに。
この場所が風の通りが良いのかもしれない。もう少しこちらへ来たまえ。
I embraced Sorako, sharing our warmth.
成田くんと触れ合っているととても暖かい。
We exchanged a smile from as close to each other as possible. Then we naturally went in for a kiss. The situation proved that our desire for one another flared up oh so easily. We forgot that we were outside and lost ourselves in the kiss.
そういえば野外どころか監視カメラがあったはずだ。
The Academy's incredible, thorough security reached places that most students wouldn't have ever imagined. And as far as I was aware, the bench was the focus of 3 cameras and a microphone. 3 cameras and microphones.
だがやめない。
That won't stop me, baby! My passion couldn't be stopped by the simple fact that we were being observed. Also, I felt no shame in showing off my perfect body. Shut up! Though I didn't really enjoy the thought that someone other than me could look at Sorako's snow-white bare skin, and so I decided to move to a position that placed her in the camera's blind spot.
成田くん、いっぱいキスしてほしい。
I gladly responded to that request. This moment seemed to be freed from the shackles of time, making it feel eternal.
待って、成田くん。
野外で戸惑う気持ちもよくわかるとも。だがそういうのが良いのではないかね。
そうじゃなくて、成田。
I continued kissing her, but she showed more resistance than usual, so I stopped for a moment.
なんだろ
Someone here?
僕だけじゃなくて、
Oh!
彼女にも分けてあげたい。
Yeah, I kind of wondered if this was gonna happen. There was no need for me to even ask what she meant.
う。楽しみ。私は一向に構わないが、本人的にはどうなのかね。強引な愛も趣はあるが、無理やりとなると個人的な主義に反するのだよ。
大丈夫だと思う。
Gosh, this is a weird place to try to get freaky. Her face turned rosy as she nodded. Sorako's proposal seemed odd, even to me. She wished to share love with the other being inside her. But wasn't that the equivalent of letting her beloved cheat on her? It's complicated. Or was it not cheating due to the fact that, in a way, both of them were Sorako? That was a philosophical problem. As someone who just told them to find their happiness, I had no reason to refuse.
そらこらしいとは思う。しかし普通にこういったシーンに呼んで彼女は現れるものかね。
だから。
She spread her arms and bared herself to me with the face of a child who just cooked up the perfect prank.
来て。
I finally realized her intention, and so I responded by kissing her again.
メガネかける。
They're just gonna throw her into the situation. That's a little weird. Once she did that, she changed
大
completely.
丈夫だから。あなたも一緒に来てほしい。そんなこんなのダメだろ。空子。
The eyes of the person who just joined us were slightly teary. I couldn't tell whether it was because they were sharing their senses or because their body was aroused. This is like the weirdest situation. I can't tell, like, I have so many, like, questions about what this would be considered. It's just weird, okay? Just strange to me.
うん、そういう場合は愛する成田様、どうかお手をお止めになってくださいというのだよ。
誰が言うか。
では仕方あるまい。続けるとしよう。
I wasn't holding her down, so she could have easily escaped if she was serious, but she didn't show that much resistance and surrendered herself to me. This had to be the mannerism maidens use to capture the hearts of men, the traditional Japanese tsundere attitude.
このままされるばかりではつまらないだろう。君も積極的に探求をしてみるといい。
なんか良さそうなセリフでごまかされると、こんなことで私が屈すると思ってるのなら。
She placed her lips against mine. Her face looked rosy, her eyes were teary, but she was still trying to keep a straight face. It gave her a charm unlike Sorako's, though they were both Sorako. She appeared reluctant, but her satisfied expression said everything I needed to know. It seemed that it was necessary for us men to be able to tolerate and be gentle with maidens that couldn't be honest with themselves. By the time we calmed down, it was already past dark. Though it was summer and the wind had gotten cold.
誰にも見られなかったかな。
Upon realizing what they'd done, Sorako reddened and hesitantly said them.
誰も来なかったとも。
There were cameras around, but that mattered little.
だが、この国のことわざには、壁に耳あり、障子に目ありというものがある。室内ですらそうなのだから、外ではどこに目が潜んでいるか想像もつかない。いや、ことスクールに関して言えば、壁に柵あり。
Saku at the doors.
ともかく、こう言い直そう。少なくとも私たちの行為を肉眼で視認できる範囲に人はいなかった。
Frankly, I was still curious why a Japanese saying had Weiss in it. Did this company have some sort of ties with a German Jewish surname?
壁に柵ありって？
Saku at the doors. Oh no. Arrow was the cause behind everyone finding out about our relationship. Did Sorako not know that Saku was listening?
言葉のあやだよ。それよりも、今日は貴重な体験ができた。
He's just trying to play it off. I forcefully changed the subject.
それは彼女と。
It probably wouldn't have happened if they weren't both Sorako.
どうかしたかね？
Sorako had just calmed down, but she suddenly turned red and looked down again. Our shoulders touched as we enjoyed the chilly night wind. It felt pleasant on our heated bodies. A moment like this where I had Sorako by my side was more precious than anything. It was like the twilight, a transient moment that could never last. Though that made it all the more
ど
special.
うしたの？
心地よいと思っていただけだよ。
私は別にそうでもない。そうだね。二人でいるとすごく心地いい。
そろそろ寮に戻ろうか。
はい。
We stood up and walked.
そういえば一つ忘れていたのだがね。彼女にも名前が必要ではないかね。
名前。
For a moment, Sorako didn't understand what I meant.
人間が家庭というなら、君たち二人がいることこそ空子という家庭だ。どちらが欠けてもそれは違ってしまうのだろう。とはいえ、どちらも空子では何よりも呼びづらい。人間ならば名前を持つものだよ。
そうだね。今まで名前なんて考えたことなかったけど、成田くんの言うことはわかる。でもどんな名前が。
I don't know, why don't you ask her?
いいのがなければそうだね。空に響くで終わりの音に字を合わせて己に響くで響きと呼ぼう。
名付けとか恥ずかしいぞ、お前。
I like how it's already changed her name to Hibiki.
ありがとう、成田くん。
Hey, well, at least we can differentiate them a little bit. I do want to check one thing. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, like, that wasn't the other character. We still haven't met them yet. I'm guessing it's whoever that fourth person is. Sorako's eyes were wet with tears of joy. I took her hand and walked to the door. Once we returned, we had to take a shower together. Oh, okay, spicy. Well, you guys, I think I'm gonna end it here. We're about at the 2 hour mark. Got a lot done, so I'm really happy with this episode. There's a lot going on, a lot of character development. Always happy to see that. And Sorako B is now Hibiki, so that's awesome. She's developing her own self, and they're cohabitating in one body. It's good. It's an interesting take on like a multiple personality disorder. I'll say that. I've always seen media that's like that, but it seems like they're a lot more assertive, whereas Hibiki is a lot more. I'm trying to do what's best for her, and I'm trying to make this work, to where it benefits them both, which is awesome, and I'm glad to see that. I'm sure we're gonna see some more interesting things. Uh, Hopefully we'll find out some more plans about what Narita is planning on doing about Shinzen in the next episode. I'm hoping that's going to be one of the focuses, because right now this is really happy and I'm great and that's awesome, but it's not going to end happily, okay? Like there's going to be some stuff that goes on. Maybe the very ending will be happy, but like the build up to that, there'll be some things going on. But anyways, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And I will see you in the next one.